Ducks fly together, so form a flying V and quack, 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 quack.
This is Collider Movie Club, and this is the Mighty Ducks. Hello, everyone. I am Perri, and this is Coy. Before we get into the Mighty Ducks, we got to let you know that this edition of Collider Movie Club is brought to you by Movies Anywhere. And right now, Movies Anywhere is celebrating their biggest offer ever. This week only, purchase from thousands of movies and then get a bonus movie from Movies Anywhere. How exactly does that work? For a limited time only, when you make a purchase from thousands of movies through a connected participating digital retailer, you'll receive a digital code to redeem for a bonus movie from the studio that released your purchased movie. Simply go to moviesanywhere.com/redeem or press redeem in the Movies Anywhere app to enter the code and choose your movie. Plus, if you already have one of the bonus movies in your collection, use the code for a free upgrade to HD or 4K if available. This offer is good through April 12th. Some exclusions apply. Visit moviesanywhere.com/bonus offer for complete details. And I am beyond thrilled to introduce our guest for this Mighty Ducks edition of the show. It's Joe Deckelmeier from ScreenRant. Hello, Joe. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Dude, so excited to Ducks.
Couldn't tell. I'm very excited. I wanted an excuse to wear this jersey more than you know.
I love the Mighty Ducks. I have a soft spot in my heart for this franchise. I mean, every iteration of the Ducks that came out, I was the perfect age for it. So my nostalgia glasses are on, and I absolutely love it.
How about we kick it off with a little breakdown of, I guess, one of the biggest themes of the entire movie. It's the idea that winning isn't everything. I feel like my competitive nature might have spun out of control had I not had Mighty Ducks in my life to at least hint that maybe focusing on the W wasn't all that mattered and that I needed to have fun in the process.
So I really wanted you to intro this first theme to hear that exact thing, because I work with Perri and I love her competitiveness, but I knew we wanted to talk about winning not being everything. And I was like, you know what? Let her take the intro. I wanted to hear the theme because I want to know how Perri experienced childhood with the theme being against all of Perri's instincts. And I think a lot of movies are like, winning isn't everything. Good thing we won at the end, though. And this movie actually feels like it lands that. And I think that's so important for kids, especially for a movie that really worked the child market in a way that didn't feel like pandering. Rewatching this movie as an adult, it was really inspiring to see that the kids were the leads, where it wasn't Emilio Estevez and his sidekicks. It actually felt like a children-led film. And at the end, I actually believed that they had learned these lessons instead of someone in a suit telling me these are the lessons. So I was really impressed with the fact that they were able to land that with such a bold start, with such an aggressive lead in Emilio Estevez and the way he played this character.
I was also a very competitive child, and I think the Mighty Ducks kind of enhanced that a little bit. But I agree with you, Coy, that it's interesting how they kind of take the character of Gordon Bombay and they absolutely land what they're trying to teach these kids. And you're right. There's this fascinating thing with all these kids in this movie that they're learning with the coach. And I love the themes that are here. You know, it's interesting because this movie didn't score very high on Rotten Tomatoes, nor did it gross a lot in the box office. I believe it grossed $50 million, which now would be roughly like $94 million, which isn't a huge take, but it's so revered as being one of the best, at least one of the best 90s kids sports movies out there. But I agree, it completely lands the winning isn't everything, and Gordon Bombay does learn. However, once we get to sequels, it feels like he falls off that wagon time after time again. So, you know.
I love that he's kind of our eye line, and he's the micro to the macro of the story at all times. And I think it's really interesting that he has to fall off in order for the movies in the sequels to have a point. Like, he stays our eye line. So therefore, if we're not learning the lesson through him, we're not going to learn the lesson. And I think that's a really hard thing to do, because if you look at like the Rocky franchise, which I see this as like kid Rocky, like there's a lot of parallels between like Rocky and this. Rocky has to relearn a lot of lessons as the movies develop. And sometimes the lessons he learns, we as an audience don't agree with, but then the movie has to convince us. And I find like Bombay has a similar thing where he's our guy, whether or not we like it.
Mighty Ducks also heavily emphasizes that, yeah, winning can be cool, but the most important thing is to be loving what you're doing. I mean, there's so many characters in the movies that are celebrated, not necessarily because they're the best players on the team, but because of what they stand for and how much they love that community that they built. That's why Charlie Conway is hands down one of my favorites. And that's why I love how these movies give out the captain title too, because it doesn't go to Adam Banks, who's the best player on the team. It goes to Charlie, who exudes all of those good values and that sets those good examples.
It was very wrong of me to ask you and the other guys to cheat. And I never should have said what I said to you. I was angry, I was frustrated, and it took a lot of guts for you to do what you knew was right. I admire that. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm... Oh, boy, this is difficult.
You're sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, all right?
But you know, it's interesting. We're talking about winning isn't everything. I find it fascinating, though, that in every iteration of the Mighty Ducks, they've won. So it is quite funny. But on to your point, though, that's what I'm fascinated to see what they do with Game Changers, because we are now entering this modern era. What does the Mighty Ducks look like now? So it is really fascinating. And I did watch that first episode, but I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Oh, we will, because I watched it and I liked it quite a bit.
Me too. My 5-year-old watched this and was absolutely in love with it. Fulton Reed is her guy. She understood the character progression he went through, but it's the lessons that are taught about losing and losing graciously. And even the young Gordon Bombay character with Lane Smith, where he tells him, you're letting me down, you're letting your team down, you're letting your dad who passed away down, is a pretty heavy message for any kid. And I like that Gordon Bombay overcomes this adversity and teaches his kids, like, hey, winning's not everything. It's really how you play. But he has to go on that journey too. Charlie stands his ground, and I love it.
A big part of the reason why the movie works so well is because Gordon can't grow without the kids and the kids can't grow without Gordon. So it all meshes together so well. The movie captures a lot of that through Fulton too, because when he's introduced, it's like the big kid with a killer shot that they absolutely need. And I feel like in many other movies, a character like that might be used as a quick fix of sorts. But no, he's got the 1 out of 5 problem. He's not the best skater. And then on top of that, if you shift the focus to Adam Banks, who's essentially an absolute all-star, then he also has challenges to overcome, but it's off the ice.
The outsider concept is essential to, again, most sports movies, but I think that children's sports movies are able to show it a little cleaner because they're able to go to the 11. They're able to tone things up a little bit where we're like, oh, it's aimed at this audience, so we're less judgmental of maybe some extremes. But this movie didn't need that. No one in this movie is a caricature. Like, they might lean towards certain things, but no one feels like, oh, they're this trope, even if they're playing it. And I feel like the outsider concept is so essential to sports films because you get to find the weirdo in yourself. And this movie, with all these individual characters, even the Boy Scout, you find out things about him and his home life that are issues. You meet this absolute outsider beating up people in an alley, and you're all about that character because there's a piece of them in all of us. And I think the outsider trope is essential for movies that feel like they're outside of our realm of a possibility. Like I don't ice skate. This movie feels so far removed from me, but because I can identify with most of the characters, I feel like it's about me at the same time. And that's how you make a good movie.
It's the idea of not fitting the cookie cutter mold of a traditional athlete where someone will look at you and think you'd be a good asset to their team. And in this case, they get at that by exploring the situation that the Ducks are in with not being able to afford the things that the Hawks players are. I mean, that's a big part of the reason why they're not in the league in the same way. They're busy taping magazines to their legs instead of having proper pads. They're literally not given the tools and the resources they need to become a good team. And it isn't until Gordon steps in and sees what they need and gets a better understanding of how to best support them and give them a fighting chance against other teams that have every privilege in the world, that they're able to tap into the talent that was likely there before, but they weren't able to exhibit it because no one supported them in the right way.
You guys ever seen a flock of ducks flying in perfect formation? It's beautiful. Pretty awesome the way they all stick together. Ducks never say die. Ever seen a duck fight? No way. Why? Because the other animals are afraid. They know that if they mess with one duck, they got to deal with the whole flock. Oh, man. I'm proud to be a duck, and I'd be proud to fly with any one of you.
Everyone's own perspective of what makes them a weirdo or outsider is unique to each character, but all of us have experienced one of those feelings at one time or another of just feeling like, I did this thing. Does that make it off or does that make it weird? And they really do a good job of having, 10 leads at times where you really identify with so many lead characters that no one takes the spotlight of the film. And that's a really hard thing to balance. Any ensemble usually has some struggling weak links, but there's a reason most of the people in this movie went on to have giant careers. This is such a career starting film. You look at this cast and it's like, oh, most of these people are still working today. That doesn't happen with most kids' sports movies, frankly.
And what you bring up is yet another reason why I think this movie wound up finding such a large audience, is because there's such a variety of characters here. I mean, most people, I think, can find one character to identify with for one reason or another. And seeing girls play sports that, when I was growing up at least, were traditionally not sports for girls was very inspiring. I definitely went on my roller hockey phase because of the Mighty Ducks. I played a lot of roller hockey as a kid until checking became a thing. And then I broke fingers and it was just not good and not for me anymore. And I switched to basketball. But they were a big key inspiration for me that made me feel like I could do anything I wanted to if I loved the sport enough. And that was a very important lesson for me growing up that I definitely got from these types of movies.
Same thing. I grew up, obviously, with the Mighty Ducks, but in South Central, and we played hockey against other streets in South Central due to the Mighty Ducks. And it was completely like a normal thing. And especially for kids that didn't play sports, I felt like it gave you that curiosity in your brain to want to go out there and play team sports and figure out what this is all about.
What I love about sports movies and 90s movies and this era in just cinema is what father figures were. And I feel like coaches are always a great element as a father figure because you look up to them, you listen to them. They're usually supposed to be wisdom figures of some kind. They're supposed to be, the people on the straight and narrow. But I love that Gordon Bombay isn't a traditional, wisdom giver or someone that you should look to. And I love that his growth is what makes him the father figure for Joshua Jackson's awesome mullet and what makes him the father figure for the rest of the league. And he earns being a father figure. It's not given to him. And that's one of my favorite things about this film is all of the lessons are earned, and it's not through tropes, it's through good writing. I think Coaches as father figures is delivered really well here. And it's a tale as told as time, but here it's done well and correctly.
I'm a big believer that a lot of those qualities were in Gordon from the very beginning of the movie. Like even when he was a kid, or at least when he was a kid before we see him in the actual feature. I think his father was probably busy instilling those kinds of values in him. And then Coach Riley kind of twisted them around a little and clouded his judgment. And then you could see, even though Gordon wound up not playing any more hockey after that experience, he still held so tight to the value that Riley placed within him for the value of winning. He became a lawyer who was obsessed with winning. And it almost mirrors the idea of not necessarily caring about winning, but also loving what you're doing as he grows along. And that winds up coming out in him figuring out through these kids that he needs to learn to love supporting others in what they love doing rather than finding ways to get what he wants in order to get his own self-gratification, which was through winning and turns out to be through something completely different. So it all goes hand in hand, and it winds up building to the point that the man that Gordon Bombay becomes at the end of the film and the influence he has on those kids is totally justified. And it was something that you saw the seeds that were planted at the very beginning of the film.
Fun fact here, the name Gordon Bombay comes from gin. It's actually the brand Gordon's and Bombay, and they combined it, and it's Gordon Bombay. I found that very interesting. Matter of fact, it's deep diving in some of the fun facts about this movie I found just as enjoyable as watching the film. None of the kids knew how to skate. I actually went to elementary school with Brandon Quentin Adams, Jesse Hall in the film. So there's little fun facts about this movie. The writer originally wanted to be cast as Coach Gordon Bombay. It obviously didn't work out, but he got a bit role in the first film. But I found this just as entertaining as just watching the movie back. I love the Mighty Ducks.
You never know what you're going to see on screen that you're going to be able to recall later in life. And when it comes to movies like The Mighty Ducks in particular, I am a big believer that it very much molded the kid I was. All this had a great influence on me at that age. And now as an adult revisiting it, and also revisiting it with I guess, a more attentive eye to what Gordon is going through. It's kind of opening the door to the possibilities that I wasn't really so attached to before in terms of what I can do to influence younger generations, whether it is my niece or just like a younger movie fan out there who might be tuning in to watch this show. So it is of great value that is a cycle and it never lets up. So if anybody out there, I feel like, ever tells someone like, oh, it's just a movie, it might not just be a movie.
Honestly, there's this amazing thing the human brain does where it feels like it's living whatever it's experiencing. So when you watch a horror movie and your palms get sweaty and you actually get scared, you know that scream killer is not actually coming for you, but you don't know it in the moment. You're experiencing it. And I think nostalgia is so important. And I think a lot of it gets unfairly maligned because of people thinking nostalgia is negative. But if you look at a family photo and you feel something and you remember the way that moment smelled and felt, or how this thing tasted, or like what it was like talking to this person, you can have that same thing with a movie. I remembered so much of my childhood rewatching Mighty Ducks. I remembered so many moments I had forgotten because it was a snapshot into my life, my experiences. And the more positive content you can put in your brain, the more art that has merit, that can shape you to be a better person, there is so much merit in consuming good TV and film because it can make you a better person. That's why I read 50 comics a week. The moral compass is strong if you're putting good art in your system because you're learning lessons through these characters. And the Mighty Ducks is a great piece of nostalgia if you grew up with it, but it's also a great film, even if you're just showing your 5-year-old kid now.
You know what? You hit it right on the head. I couldn't agree with you more. So I was probably more so worried that the movie wouldn't hold up the way that I remembered it. And luckily, it absolutely did. Like you said, some of the things that I almost forgot, it was like, I remember what's going to happen here. It was these cool little callbacks that were going on in my head. But to watch a 5-year-old experience it for the first time, it took me right back. Literally, we were all quacking on the couch whenever Gordon, like this happened 2 times in the film, when they give them the green jerseys and when they're out there on the ice. We started quacking and it became such a beautiful moment I got to share because I felt I was watching my 10-year-old self do the same thing with my friends when we watched this at school. So like nostalgia is, and film at its best, is something that can evoke emotion and something that you can remember.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ducksworth. Thank you very much, Mr. Ducksworth. Quack, 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 Mr. Ducksworth. Quack, quack, quack,
Gordon,
quack, quack.
Stop
Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. You may have paid for this jersey, sir, but you didn't earn it. I'll see you in the playoffs.
I feel like the recent trend of bringing back popular properties from, I guess, the 80s and 90s in particular, and putting a new spin on them, in a sense, is really getting into that more so than ever, too. I mean, we know how much I'm obsessed with Cobra Kai, and now we have it with Mighty Ducks Game Changers, too. And I would say it's off to a pretty good start as far as tapping into the nostalgia that I did love in the original Mighty Ducks movie, but also taking it a step further and modernizing it a bit, and also showing how some of the older characters like Gordon Bombay are in a different place in their lives. And they're kind of adapting to the aging that you were bringing up, Coy. And, you know, as someone who is aging herself, that is a very inspirational thing that I feel like I need now more than ever, and reinforce the great value in what I saw and loved as a child and what I've taken in, how that's morphed me into who I am today, and how I can use that to give back to other people first coming to love these properties as children right now. So I just love how it brings everything together.
But it's interesting looking at Gordon Bombay's journey a little bit, because it reminds me very much of Luke Skywalker from Rise of Skywalker, the way that he is in Game Changers a little bit, where he's kind of done with hockey at this point now. And it's fascinating to see where Gordon Bombay is. And I'm really curious to see where that character goes going forward in Game Changers, and kind of just what happens with this team. Because I really think that the show is so cute. And I love the new kids that are the Mighty Ducks. I really do.
Each of the movies, there has to be a fall off point so we can learn the lesson through Gordon. I think we're going to get that again here. And I think it's going to be an interesting meta awareness of, you know, to bring up Cobra Kai as Perri did, you'll notice there's a lot more karate happening again, like in the world. We're 3 years in to Cobra Kai, and there's a lot more karate. I think we're going to see a surge of hockey. I think what's going to happen is with the Game Changers, as Gordon Bombay falls in love with hockey again, so too will we. And he's going to be our eye line into the hockey perspective, into organized sports. We're going to see him grow as a coach, as a father figure, as a source of wisdom. And we're going to be identifying with Gordon in a very new way, because I'd say we all feel much more like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi than we do in Return of the Jedi. I'm certainly dealing with my fair bits of cynicism and burn the sacred texts and like not seeing my heroes as heroes. I'm certainly identifying with the struggle because of the world right now. So I think Gordon Bombay being not a shiny source of happiness is going to help us identify with him more. And then his hero's journey back to being a coach is going to be way more relatable. I think he's going to end up more of a Hans than a Kreese. And I think that's going to be a better show for it.
I think you're right on the money there. He is not going down the Kreese path, but I feel like Gordon's situation in Mighty Ducks Game Changers could put him on the path of being a very realistic, true to life character, because we know we love our underdog movies where they win in the end, you feel really good, and you just envision those characters walking off into the sunset where everything is perfect from then on out. That is not how life really works. You might fall back in love with something. You might get really good at something again, but then you hit a bump in the road and something out there threatens to take it away. And I feel like that's the kind of journey that Mighty Ducks Game Changers might be scratching the surface of at this point with Gordon. And I think that's going to be something that a lot of people out there relate to that we don't see on screen nearly enough.
I'm excited to see him rediscover his love for hockey as I'm rediscovering my love for the Mighty Ducks. So you're right, man. That eye line right there.
I think it's the perfect way to have parents identify with their kids more by having us all at our age watch something that isn't a quote unquote kid show, but also show our kids our childhood. And I think that's such a magical thing that art can do, is just bring families closer together.
Peter said you blew a really big game once.
Yeah, well, Peter's right. It was the last game of the state finals. We were tied 2-2 in the end of the third period. I get a penalty shot. I go in, I triple deke, I fake the goalie right out of his pads. Puck's headed in, and then clang. Hits the post. We lost in overtime. Quarter of an inch this way and it would have gone in. A quarter of an inch, Charlie.
Well, yeah, but a quarter of an inch the other way and you would have missed completely.
I never thought of it that way.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode and for sharing your story about your experience sharing Mighty Ducks with your 5-year-old. I mean, that is just incredible and it fills my heart.
I thank you guys so much for giving me that experience, because I would have probably not have done it had this not come up. So I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to introduce her to the Mighty Ducks, because now she's all about it and she wants to rewatch them over and over again. So luckily we do have this Game Changer show where she can watch the Mighty Ducks unfold every single week, which is awesome.
As we mentioned earlier, this episode of Collider Movie Club is brought to you by Movies Anywhere. As part of their biggest offer ever, Movies Anywhere is giving users a bonus movie for new qualifying purchases. So what does that mean for you? Well, if you purchase today's movie club entry, The Mighty Ducks, you can choose from one of 10 bonus movies to add to your collection. Now, these are our top choices. Perry, what do you got?
Oh, I got a good one. If you are looking for a real good young adult book to film adaptation, you have to watch The Maze Runner. It is a phenomenal feature directorial debut from Wes Ball, has an incredible ensemble that is led so well by Dylan O'Brien. It is one heck of a thrill ride. Cannot recommend it enough.
One of my favorite things about Disney acquiring Fox is now more people have access to Marky Mark's Planet of the Apes. Now, these are some good vibrations. These are some good times. This movie's just crazy. It is Tim Burton at his Burtoniest, making a remake of a classic that doesn't follow the classic's path, so you get to be surprised anew. The movie's Banana Sandwich. Enjoy it. It's Planet of the Apes. So, if you take advantage of Movies Anywhere's biggest offer ever, be sure to act fast. It's good only for this week. Go to moviesanywhere.com/bonus offer for complete details. We'll see you real soon for another edition of Collider Movie Club. Thank you so much for watching.